Great. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining today. So today's training topic is on community eligibility provision, submitting the CEP elections. All right. So today's agenda, first, we're going to go over current guidance and background information, CEP notification requirements, elections, submitting CEP elections in eScholar, and then other CEP considerations. So there's many guidance materials available for CEP. Please note that the CEP guidance was updated last year. And so these are the updated links to the planning and implementation guidance, the guidance and updated Q&As, the implementing the new minimum identified student percentage, and the statutory annual notification and publication requirements. So what is community eligibility provision? It's a program established by the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act that allows students to receive free meals under the school breakfast program and National School Lunch Program. While the program operates on a 4-year cycle, schools may opt in or opt out each year. As an alternative to household applications for free and reduced price meals, CEP schools cannot process meal applications. Prior to being approved to participate in CEP, SFAs must agree to the following: serving all children free breakfast and lunches, cover costs above reimbursement amounts with non-federal funds, not collect or process meal applications. SFAs by individual sites or clusters of sites must have an enrollment with at least 25% of the students considered identified students to participate in CEP. Your data point must be as of April 1st of the school year prior to participation, which would be April 1st, 2020-25 for school year 25-26. Also, resident childcare institutions are not eligible. School food authorities must use non-federal funding sources to cover operational costs when the federal reimbursement received under CEP is less than the cost of providing no-cost meals to all students. Non-federal funding sources include, but are not limited to, any portion of state revenue matching funds that exceeds the minimum requirement established in 7 CFR Part 210.17, profits from a la carte sales, cash donations, in-kind contribution funds from outside sources such as volunteer services. During the process of determining school eligibility, the term identified students refers to children who are directly certified for free school meals based on their participation or a household member's participation in other means-tested assistance programs such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF, or the Food Distribution Program on Indian reservations. Also, Medicaid-free students. Please note that Medicaid Reduced is not included in identified students as it only includes those that qualify for free meals. Identified students are also children who are categorically eligible for free school meals without an application and who are not subject to verification, including homeless, runaway, and migrant, children enrolled in a federally funded Head Start program or comparable state-funded Head Start or pre-kindergarten program, foster children certified through means other than a household application. Please note that children must be considered eligible for one of these categories between the start of the school year and April 1st. That file that came out in April was March data, so before April 1st. A few quick points for school food authorities to remember in determining school eligibility. Students in the same household with directly certified students can be counted as identified students. The SFA are not able to use information from free and reduced application to identify students. If an identified student percentage of at least 62.5% is determined, then all meals are reimbursed at a free rate. And if the identified student percentage falls between 25 and 62.5%, then meals will be reimbursed at a combination of both free and paid rates. Reminder, there was a new 25% threshold as of 2024. So determining school eligibility, once again, all children that fall into the categories listed are referred to as identified students. All right. So this is the formula that SFA should use to determine the identified student percentage. You will divide the number of identified students as of April 1st by the number of enrolled students as of April 1st, and then multiply by 100. I've provided two examples of percentages for you. The first example shows a school that has determined that there are 555 identified students with a total enrollment of 700 students. To find the identified student percentage, or ISP, you would divide the 550 identified students by the enrollment of 700. So 550 divided by 700 equals 0.857. You multiply that by 100 and you get an ISP of 78.57%, which meets the threshold. The second example shows 135 identified students with a total enrollment of 700 students. Again, you would divide the 135 identified students by the 700 enrollment, which is 0.1929, multiply by 100 to calculate the ISP of 19.29%. Please remember that the ISP must be at least 25% to be eligible. Therefore, the percentage of 19.29% does not meet the threshold. So your calculated ISP percentage is your free claiming percentage. So the way you calculate your calculated ISP percentage is the ISP is multiplied by 1.6 equals the percentage of meals claimed at the free rate. So the ISP multiplied by 1.6. The remaining meals served, up to 100%, are reimbursed at the paid rate. In example 1, we'll use the ISP from the previous slide. So 78.57% multiplied by the CEP multiplier of 1.6 equals a calculated percentage of 125.71%. This percentage exceeds 100%, therefore all meals can be claimed as free. In example 2, an SFA with an ISP of 46.85% multiplied by the CEP multiplier of 1.6 equals a calculated ISP, or free claiming percentage, of 74.96%. So this SFA will claim 74.96% of their meals at the free rate and the remaining 25.04% of their meals at the paid rate. Now we will discuss the notification requirements. So CEP election requirements. CEP elections open today, May 20th, 2025. All CEP elections must be made by June 30th annually, and all CEP elections will be completed in the eScholar CEP Manager. So the CEP deadline dates. So we've already passed the deadline for the data used to calculate the ISP. So no additional matches will be included in your CEP data. The LEA notification and state agency notification was April 15th for your population data, and we published that on May 1st, 2025. The next deadline is June 30th, 2025. You must make final elections regarding CEP participation for the 2025-26 school year through the eScholar CEP Manager by June 30th. CEP elections. What are CEP elections? So it's electing into CEP is choosing to participate in the Community Eligibility Provision Program for the upcoming school year. School food authorities decide whether schools will participate individually as part of a cluster or district-wide. Schools may be grouped in any way as long as the group as a whole has an ISP of 25% or higher. The ISP for a group of schools is calculated as follows: the sum of the identified students for the entire group of schools divided by the sum of the total enrollment for the entire group of schools. This is done by the CEP manager whenever you're selecting your groups or individual participation or district-wide. Districts can group schools in order to maximize federal reimbursements. So what is a base year? The base year is the first year of the four-year CEP cycle. If the SFA reestablished, the base year will be the upcoming school year. For example, a base year of 2025 means school year 24-25 was the first year of the four-year cycle, whereas a base year of 2026 means school year 25-26 will be the first year of the four-year cycle. Once you choose how the CEP runs on a four-year cycle, at the end of the fourth year, schools must redetermine their eligibility and funding based on approved data sources. However, schools can choose to recalculate and lock in their funding rate each year if it increases or is at the 100% free claiming threshold year to year. Alternatively, they can keep that same funding rate through the four-year cycle. So in the next page, we have a chart that just demonstrates how, when you elect a base year, what years you would be able to continue to run off of that same base year. So if you elect a base year of 2026 this year, then this be using data from April 1st, 2025, and you could continue to use that base year data for school year 2026, 27, 28, and 29. If you're using a older base year right now, this chart also explains which years you would be able to use that data. So, when is establishing a new base year required? Anytime there's a change in student population that impacts the identified students or the enrollment, the school or the group of schools participating in CEP must recalculate the ISP. And on the updated Q&As, it goes into a little bit more detail. So the changes to a student population could indicate a change in the poverty level of the household served by the school and may require an ISP to be recalculated within a four-year cycle. Okay. So this year, we are going to be doing CEP elections in eScholar. So this is the same eScholar login that you used for going in to do population. So while logging into eScholar, users should access the login URL linked on the screen and enter your login information. To get to CEP Manager, the CEP Manager icon is the abacus on the navigation panel. The icon will only appear if the user has rights to the CEP Manager functions within Security Manager. CEP Manager allows the user to view, update, and certify the population and election data. So everyone's population submission has been approved by us at the state. And so the district will see the approved status indicator for population. Now let's click the Elections Recalculate tab. The Elections tab is available as of this time of this training, so it is now open. All right. The first time you open the Elections Recalculation page, you will need to select Load Election Data in order for the data to populate the sites sections. After you load the election data, please review that all of your sites successfully loaded under a location name. If you have a larger number of sites, you may need to click Load More at the bottom of the page. This page contains pre-populated data from your last year's election submission, which is your base year population data, and the current year population data from the April 1st, 2025 population tab. Current base year is the first year of your up to four-year cycle. The number in parentheses 1 is the number of years you have operated under this base year. So if you are running off of 2023 numbers, you would see 3 in parentheses. Please note that the participation decision column will default to the prior year participation decision, but is able to be adjusted. So a quick overview. So CEP Manager Election Summary. Uh, Under Elections Recalculate or the Calculate worksheet, Step 1 for elections. This is where you're going to select a participation decision for each site or select districts wide. Under Elections Participation Summary, the section displays all the sites identified as participating, individual participation or in a cluster, in the sites panel above. The data displayed in the table will be dependent on your selection in the base year decision column. You must select a base year decision for each site. Then you move on to the next tab, which is the election submission results. On this page, you must review and verify the elections data before submitting, and after submitting and certifying, the election status will change to submitted. So we're going to be going through these 3 steps for 3 different scenarios. All right. So our first example is district-wide CEP election. The district-wide button, this selects all eligible sites to participate in one cluster of sites. If you are electing CEP for all CEP eligible sites, you can check the district-wide button and all sites will be clustered together. This recalculate page allows the user to indicate if they're going to go district-wide, and they would not have to do any site-by-site setup. If the school food authority is greater, ISP is greater than 25%, the district-wide button will be available to select. This sponsor was district-wide in the previous school year, so it is automatically selected. And so it's that purple slider tab. So on the right-hand column, you'll see cluster group summary. It shows district-wide, the number of sites, your base year, the base year ISP, and current year ISP. This same information loads under election participation summary, current/base year data. Because the sponsor participated in CEP as district-wide in the current school year and has been running off base year data for less than 4 years, base year decision has 2 options. Continue with existing base year or create a new base year. The following slide shows what populates under decision data when each option is selected. Right? So we're still on that step 2, but if you selected continue with existing base year, the decision data populates with 2025, your previous base year, which was your population data from April 1, 2024. If you select create a new base year, the decision data populates with 2026 base year data, population data from April 1, 2025. Reminder, if your current school year ISP has increased from your ISP of the prior year, or you are above 62.5%, you would want to consider creating a new base year. All right. Review the election submission results. Note that after ISP percentage, there is calculated ISP percentage, which is your free claiming percentage. This example, they decided to continue their base year from last year because the ISP percentage was higher last year. So on this page, once you've reviewed the election submission, what you chose on the previous page, you're going to, so once those CEP determinations are made for each site, you must certify the information is correct by checking the box next to the certification statement. After checking the certification box, you can submit. After you hit submit, the election status box will change to submitted, and you will have completed your elections. So now we're going to give another example. So if a sponsor were to decide to participate in CEP, but not district-wide, so not at all of their sites. So we're going to be going over clusters, individual participation, and not participating. All right. So the district can also set up the site-by-site participation, and the clusters can be assigned on this page. When choosing clusters, choose cluster 1 first, followed by cluster 2, 3, and 4 sequentially. Please do not skip a cluster number in the sequence. The cluster's ISP percentage will automatically populate under Cluster Group Summary and Election Participation Summary. On the next slide, you will see the cluster change when you change a site to individual participation. Right. Individual participation only applies to schools operating CEP by themselves at their individual ISP, so not as a part of a group. Not participating sites will not operate under CEP and must collect free and reduced price meal applications. Please note that not participating sites will not be listed under election participation summary as they are not participating. So on the previous slide, we changed one site that was in a cluster to an individual participation. So the cluster 1 now reflects a total of 3 sites. So in step 1, you selected 3 schools as part of the cluster, and so the total number of sites in that cluster is reflected as 3. The cluster group summary and election participation summary will automatically update each time you make a change under participation decision. Because the sponsor has selected a new cluster and a site for individual participation, the only option that populates is to create a new base year. Note that the non-participating site does not appear under Elections Participation Summary because it is not participating. All right. So you move on to election submission. Because there is a cluster, the user can view the details for election submissions by clicking the double arrow to drill into the details for cluster 1. So the double arrow by cluster 1, you select that. This page shows you the school locations included in the cluster, total identified, total enrolled, and ISP percentage for each site. It also breaks down which programs the identified students were matched under. Click the double arrow on the top right to return back to the election submissions page for step 3. Once the CEP determinations are made for each site, and you've confirmed that this is how you want to elect to participate in CEP for the upcoming school year, you must certify the information is correct by checking the box next to the certification statement. 2, after checking the certification box, you can submit and certify the elections. Now we're going to go over a third example, electing not participating in community eligibility provision. Right. This is an example where the school board authority has decided that none of their sites will participate in community eligibility provision. All sites are marked as non-participating. Not participating sites indicate that the site will not participate in CEP, will charge, and will collect free and reduced price meal applications. You will have no elections for participation to select if all site participation is not participating. Move on to Election Submission tab by selecting it at the top of the page. So the election submission results list all the schools as not participating. So now that the CEP determinations are made for each site, you must certify the information is correct by checking the box next to the certification statement. And then after checking the certification box, you can submit. You still do have to submit elections even if you're electing not to participate. All right, so after you submit and certify, the election status box will change to submitted, and the submit and certify checkbox will be grayed out. All right, so quick summary. Step 1, you're selecting a participation decision for each site or selecting district-wide. For step 2 for elections, the election participation summary, you must select a base year decision for district-wide, individually participating sites or clusters. And then step 3 on the election submissions tab, you must review and verify the election data before submitting. After submitting and certifying, the election status will change to submitted. All right. So now we're going to go over a few other CEP considerations. Newly opened schools and our schools new to NSLP school breakfast program should contact the state agency to discuss if they are able to participate in CEP. They are handled on a case-by-case basis. Please note that the deadlines for elections is June 30th for all schools. Opting out of CEP. School food authorities schools may elect to stop CEP at any time by notifying LDOE of the decision, notifying households of the decision, and allowing ample time for submission of free and reduced applications. School food authorities must offer all students reimbursable free meals for a period of at least 30 operating days following the date of restoration of standard procedures or until a new eligibility determination is made, whichever comes first. End of CEP cycle or grace year. So what if an SFA does not have an identified student percentage of 25% or higher in year 4 of the current cycle? In this situation, the SFA may be eligible to stay on the option for an additional year grace period. In order to be eligible for this grace year, the identified student's percentage in year 4 of the last cycle must be between 15 and 25%. Therefore, if a system cluster in year 4 has an ISP of 19%, they could continue a grace year at 30.4% free claiming and 69.6% paid claiming. Note, non-federal funds are necessary if the total amount of federal reimbursement through CEP does not fully cover the costs of serving all students meals at no charge. All right. So carryover and transfer of eligibility. Carryover refers to child's eligibility from the previous school year being carried over into the new or current school year. According to 7 CFR 245.6, an individual student's eligibility from the previous school year, which is defined as prior to July 1st, carries over for up to 30 operating days into the new school year or until a new eligibility determination is made, whichever comes first. The 30 operating days begin on the first operating day of school. The operating days are the days in which reimbursable meals are provided by a school or another program sponsor. Carryover applies to eligibility established through a household application or through direct certification. Meals served during the carryover period are claimed at the appropriate rate depending on the individual child's eligibility status from the previous school year. Carryover allows students to continue receiving school meal benefits while families complete and submit and schools process applications. The carryover period is not intended to delay processing of applications. Instead, schools must process applications as they are received and promptly notify households of their eligibility. Within 10 days of receiving the application, the LEA must make a determination and notify the household of its eligibility status. While not required to issue a notification about the carryover period, school officials are encouraged to clarify for families that the carryover will end after 30 operating days. School officials should inform affected families that they must submit a new application for meal benefits to reestablish their child's eligibility before the end of the carryover period. If a student transfers within an SFA from a non-CEP school to another non-CEP school, the free or reduced eligibility must transfer with the student from the previous school. If a student transfers from a non-CEP school to a CEP school within an SFA, the students will automatically receive free meals. If a student transfers from a CEP school to a non-CEP school within an SFA, the SFA must provide free meals for up to 10 operating days or until a new eligibility determination is made. If a student transfers to a new SFA from a non-CEP school to another CEP school, the free and reduced price eligibility may transfer from one SFA to another. If a student transfers from a non-CEP school to a CEP school in an SFA and a new SFA, the students will receive free meals at the new school. If a student moves from a CEP school into a non-CEP school in a different SFA, the school must provide free meals for 10 operating days or until a new eligibility determination is made. So what about a meal charge policy? If all schools and the school food authority operate a non-pricing provision, like community eligibility provision, the SFA is not required to develop a meal charge policy as no children will be charged for meals. If any school/schools and the school food authority operate standard counting and claiming, the SFA must develop a meal charge policy. Verification. CEP schools will not complete the verification of applications, but will complete the verification summary form due in January annually. Income surveys. So alternative procedures must be used to determine economic status of individual students since CEP schools are not allowed to collect free and reduced price meal applications. School systems without meal applications may not be capturing kids that are economically disadvantaged based on income eligibility for free or reduced meals. School systems can implement an income eligibility survey to collect students' family income data with the goal of accurately identifying these students for economically disadvantage. Note, alternative household income surveys are not school meal applications, and the costs associated with collecting household income information in CEP schools may not be charged to the nonprofit school food service account. Students identified as economically disadvantaged from income surveys are not considered identified students for CEP. All right. So record keeping requirements. CEP schools are subject to the same basic reporting and record keeping requirements as schools conducting normal counting and claiming or operating under other special provisions. The state agency does assess the accuracy of an LEA's ISP. In Louisiana, as part of the administrative review, the SA will locate 10% or a statistically valid sample of identified students' names on appropriate source documentation. Therefore, the SFA must, at a minimum, as part of the administrative review records, maintain the following ISP data for LEAs and schools participating in CEP: a list of all the identified students with their ISP classification used to determine the ISP from all schools participating in CEP from each district, documentation for the total enrollment at all CEP schools, and the ISP worksheet. The LEAs use to calculate the ISPs and submit to state agencies with appropriate documentation. In addition, this documentation must be retained for 3 years after submission of the final claim for reimbursement under that claiming percentage. All CEP elections, so in summary, all CEP elections must be completed in eScholar CEP Manager elections. So at the secureid.ldoe.la.gov, CEP elections will begin today as of May 20th, 2025, and all CEP elections must be made by June 30th, 2025. If you have any questions, please contact the LDE Division of Nutrition Support, Child Nutrition Programs at la.gov. In our department, myself, Mary Katie Moses, and Kylie Champagne will be helping support y'all with your CEP elections. If you have any issues with logging into eScholar or navigating eScholar, you can also reach out to Anantha and Jane with the AAA team. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate all of you taking the time. And please reach out with any questions.